To give us the speech on the consumer confidence trends is Mr. Lampe Omoyele. He's the MD of Nielsen West Africa. Please.
Honorable Minister, ADVAN President, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say it's an honor, privilege to have been invited to share a few thoughts around consumer confidence. And let me just give two helpful warnings. The first is that I'm going to share some perspectives that might hit some brands or commend some brands. I will try very hard to be subtle in the messaging to the Honorable Minister. But I'm going to present facts and share what consumers are saying, and also offer perspectives to brand owners in terms of how we can ride the current situation that we are in. Since 2015, 2016, we're going through a change, and no pun intended. Can we just encourage, can everyone see the slides? Okay. Can you ask some help to move the podium a bit, please, if possible? So, Nigeria has gone through a change in 2015. So Nigeria has gone through this change. And if I may just take you through it, we can understand some of the things that have happened since Q1 of 2015. And I'll just try and ride us through this. So in Q1 2015, there was uncertainty as elections approached. As elections approached, there was uncertainty. The elections were postponed, the presidential ones, and then later successfully held. In Q2 2015, this is what we know, fiscal pressure as oil prices dipped. We thankfully had a smooth transition. And then in Q2 2015, there was also a fuel scarcity crisis. In Q3 2015, oil prices dipped further. 27 states owed salaries, couldn't pay their staff. In Q4 2015, there was uncertainty in the air as a result of not having clarity around the economic direction the country was going on. Ministers were appointed and the budget was presented. In January 2015 and February, fuel scarcity reared its head again, and the uncertainty around the economic direction remained. In the past 2-3 months, we've seen increased energy prices, and energy prices here will include how much, and the minister already alluded to this, the cost of fuel, the result of hoarding, scarcity emanating. We've had rates increase in electricity tariff, and as we know what happened just yesterday. As a result, there has been a significant macroeconomic slowdown amidst the uncertainty. These are things that we recognize. So just to give headlines: decline in government revenue and the depreciation of the naira. And I choose the word depreciation deliberately because it's not a formal devaluation, it's a depreciation. There's been a drop in foreign investments in the country, and what has resulted is that the government doesn't have enough revenue to address many of the issues and funds in the country. And as a consequence, we've also seen rising inflation. And just to give you numbers from the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, compared to 2015, March 2015, when general inflation was at 8.5%, the report as of March the following year, it had gone to 12.8%. The forecast was that it would go to 13.2%, but that was before yesterday. So it can potentially go into high double digits, approaching between 15 and 20, depending on how things evolve. So that's a key thing to note. Food inflation has actually risen above general inflation. And as I'll share shortly, spend of most households is predominantly around food, and there are implications for that. So food inflation as of March 2015 was at 11.3%. As at March 2016 had gone up to 12.7%. And so we expect that that would increase in the weeks and months ahead. Major drivers: cost of transportation has gone up. There's the rise of imported food and non-food items, and then also the electricity tariffs that I mentioned earlier. Now, the consequence of rising inflation is that wages are not necessarily increased. So I don't know if any of us in the room has had a salary increase in the past 6 months. Anyone? Okay. I will not. The other minister raised his hand up. Okay. So we know the more viable employer law. Well, this slides from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. It only shows between just comparing half year in the past 5 years. But what we can see is, and I'll explain this is the compensation of employees generally. This is disposable income. So what has happened is that between 2012 and 2014, there was an increase in disposable income. That is the amount of money that is available for consumers to spend money and buy things that they need. But since 2014 up to 2015, it has dipped significantly. So that has implications, because there is less money. And because consumers therefore don't have enough money in their pockets, they're not sure around what's going to happen in the future, their confidence has declined. Now this data that I'm showing is based on the Nielsen Consumer Confidence Index. And just to give a bit of a context of how it is measured, there are 3 key indices that are measured. One is what consumers' attitude to their job prospects are. 2, what they feel about their current financial state and the future. And 3rd, what do they feel about their intention to spend money. Those are the 3 key indices. And we speak to 3,000 consumers across, taking care of the socioeconomic classifications in Nigeria and getting how they feel. So these numbers have to do with how they feel. And because we know that how people feel drives their behavior and their actions, it's really important to understand how they feel. And so what has happened is, since we started capturing this data in Q1 of 2014, there was an increase steadily all the way to Q2 2015. If you reflect on what I said in terms of the scenarios that have played out in the past 1 year, I'm beginning to link this with how consumers are feeling, then we'll be to understand. In that there was uncertainty in their minds leading up to the elections in Q1 of 2015. With the elections having successfully held, there was hope in the minds of consumers that things would turn around for good, and therefore the steadiness in consumer confidence. However, the hope began to decline somewhat with not having clarity in terms of the future and the direction. Now, in terms of the index, 100 is the baseline. Any figure above 100 shows degrees of positivity. Numbers below 100 show negativity and pessimism. So the thing to flag out here is the numbers had increased for Nigeria consumer confidence, yes, over 100, and in some other settings have been asked, despite the circumstances, why is this still positive? My response is that Nigerians are the most optimistic people in the world. And you probably say it's driven by what I call the God day philosophy. When you ask a Nigerian how things are tough, but he would say God day. So that drives a certain level of optimism. But the real concern is that because Nigerians are the most optimistic people in the world, the fact that a decline has begun steadily from Q3 raises a red flag and the cause for concern. So as at Q3 2015, the decline occurred. There was a steadiness in Q4, we're going to move to 7. Next week, Nielsen will officially release the report of Q1 2016. However, I can share with you that there is a significant decline in consumer confidence about their job prospects, around their financial state, and around their intention to spend in the near term. Now, this highlights what I said earlier. So around job prospects, we can see it is plateauing into, as we go to the end of Q4, it's plateauing after the increase in earlier parts of 2015. Same for the state of personal finance. The next slide will show that the intention to spend in the near term is even declining further. So even though job prospects are declining, the optimism around job prospects is declining, optimism around their financial status is declining, their intention to spend is even declining further. Why is this? This is because they're not sure about the future. Their disposable income is being weakened, and they're therefore worried. Do I save money? Do I spend? What do I spend on? And so in 2014, when they talk about a good time to spend was at 56%. It declined in Q3 2015 to 48%, and just more or less plateaued in Q4. The expectation is that Q1, they're going to be holding even further and reprioritizing what they spend money on. Now, I said at the start that food and grocery accounts for a significant part of what households spend on. When Nielsen did this research about a year and a half ago, food and grocery account for 25%, significant part, the highest part. However, with the level of food inflation, with costs going up, the expectation is that they're going to spend a lot more on food. And because food is a need, what they're going to do, their disposable income is not increasing. The tenure they have remains the same, yet they must eat. So what's likely to happen to other things they spend money on? They will begin to cut and reprioritize. And what we are finding from research is that the things that they will spend money on is the foodstuff, staple foods, cost of transportation, school fees, which are likely to go up shortly, telephone airtime and fuel, as we can see. Well before the fuel increase of yesterday, about 2 weeks ago, I went into my barber's shop and they had put a notice to give us notice. And saying, due to the current operating environment, and I'm serious, this is the barber shop, due to the current operating environment, we will need to increase price. And the price took effect from Workers' Day, May Day. And they increased the cost of cutting my hair by 50%. By 50%. So rather than go weekly, now I'm reflecting on going fortnightly. And for the first time in years, I shaved myself this morning. And as I did so, I cut myself. But those are the things that consumers are going to begin to do. They're going to cut down on what they spend money on. So the consumers are also telling us that they would most likely spend less money on Asheri. And I hope the wives help the men. Clothing, and like I said, hairdo, they're going to reduce, so they're going to cut out certain things. For brand owners, they're going to cut out certain amounts they consume in terms of brands, branded items. Staple foods they're going to spend more money on. They're going to maintain spend around issues around water, and they potentially can eliminate what they spend money on such as jewelry and things like that. So there's going to be a reprioritization of spend. And this is what this slide indicates. They're going to look for different ways. Now, specifically for marketing people in the room, FMCGs, this too, as we know, the frequency and occasion is what drives consumption and market share. There's going to be a challenge around frequency of usage and amount that consumers use per time. For example, if they consume food drinks, beverages, 1 liter or below, and perhaps they used to consume twice a day, they may cut it down to only breakfast time. If what they once used was a big mug, they may cut it down to a smaller mug. If what they used to do is buy a 450 gram or 550 gram pack, they may reduce it to 200 gram or less. Now, these are things that marketers need to be thinking about in terms of riding this current situation. And we're already seeing that. From the Nielsen Retail Audit, one of the things we are finding is in full year 2015, using the food, drinks, beverages as an example, in terms of those buying 20 gram sachet, has increased to almost 60% from less than 50%. So a lot of consumers are shifting to sachets, cheaper options. Same for less than 35 gram. Now, the alcohol segment is also an interesting one, because one of the things that we are seeing from data is that the alcohol segment, a lot of consumers are shifting from the premium brands to the value brands. And this is what we are seeing across different categories. Consumers want to survive, so they are looking for different ways. And this is the scorecard of what has happened in the whole of 2015. In green here is the whole of 2014. We can see that across total FMCG, Nielsen captures 50 categories of FMCGs. And when we consolidate together, we see that in 2014, month on month, there was growth for FMCGs as a whole. That's fast-moving consumer goods. But at the turn of 2015, from January, we start to see that total FMCGs as a whole declined every month, which means that consumers were consuming less throughout 2014. Again, please reflect on what I shared, the journey that we started as a nation in 2015 to date. And we're seeing that across categories that is happening. Foods, confectionery, baby products, home care, personal care, medicines, non-alcoholic beverages. Alcohol, beverages, and telco were two of the exceptions that grew in 2015. We also saw that secrets were also minimal in terms of growth. Now the question is asked, why? How come? When there's an economic recession, people will look for escape. So alcohol is one of those areas of escape. Nigerians like to talk, and therefore they will keep talking. Perhaps ask someone to please send money to them. But so telcos have thrived, we're going to thrive, but even those categories do have a challenge. So we've seen a decline in terms of consumption when you compare 2015 to 2014 in terms of consumption as a whole. And we'll see this in the results, and I just selected a few corporates in 2015 to just show some of the results to see how this has actually impacted upon corporates. For full year reports, for GSK, for example, and please note I did give a health warning at the start, we'll share real life examples. GSK, no growth really. Net profit, almost 50% decline in net profits. Why? Because even though you're trying to maintain growth, you can't take price increases because consumers would resist it, yet the cost of operations have increased. Nestle, marginal growth at 5%. Okay, marginal net profit growth. The Nestle business resilient because of the level of diversity and of diversification, beg your pardon, and also, and I will refer to this later on, so what are the key learnings? Also consistently engaging with consumers. Diageo is having a really difficult time. 20% decline in performance in terms of revenue, 83% decline in net profit. And that's generally costs across most of the corporates. Very few corporates are growing, and this is an impact because of the impact of consumer confidence and what consumers' ability to spend money. So 2016 seems to be a year of a perfect storm. Lots of things are happening. We see the government has difficulty in financing federal and state budgets, and I use budget here, governments here, not just the federal government, but state governments as a whole. There's turmoil in commodity prices, there's a drop in FDI, oil prices, instability, double-digit inflation, difficulty in sourcing forex for developed businesses. So we see there's a lot of challenge for both government, for manufacturers, business as a whole. And we see this in the news every day. Now, when consumers see this kind of news every day, what it does is creates concern, creates fear about the future, and the result is their confidence level tends to decline. So the issue is, what's the outlook for 2016? What do brand owners need to do? So we project it to decline further, and as I said, the results which we produce next week will show a decline, but it need not necessarily decline beyond Q2, depending on what brand owners and other stakeholders do. So far in Q1 2016, the data is showing a similar pattern of reduced consumption, but again, which is in correlation to the level of consumer confidence that is felt. So across most categories, some businesses are growing, but across categories, there are some decline. But the good news, we're Nigerians and God day, is that Nigeria still has the highest level of consumer confidence in Africa. Yeah, I don't know if that deserves a clap of but that is good news, and I'll explain why. Where confidence level is, there's still optimism, there's still a belief. It means that if brand owners engage with the consumer, they will spend. And I think that's a key point. It's about engaging with consumers, engaging in different ways. And I'll share some of the themes. Awareness is going to be important. Affordability, and I'm not talking about being cheap. Affordability is going to be important. Availability is going to be critical because consumers now are going to be looking for choices, and it's brands that they see that they will buy. And then the fourth is assurance. If you want to use another word, trust. They are going to look for brands that they can trust. And it's brands that are there with them, for them, during this period that will win the battle. Business, as we know, governance, as we know, is a marathon and not a sprint. And therefore, this is not the time to cut spend drastically. This is not the time for brand owners to go quiet, because it's the brands that engage and are top of the mind with consumers that will win in these times. So key operating words is engaging with consumers and sustaining loyalty. What is going to be very important now is, first of all, to hold market share. When there's a decline in consumption in categories, the first thing you don't do is lose market share. So it's very important to hold market share and begin to battle for increase in market share. Shoppers more willing to switch brands if choices are available. And I highlight there market and mind presence. What is required now is to drive presence in marketplace and presence in the minds of consumers, to keep reassuring them and giving them hope. This is the time to sell hope. Brands are a promise of fulfilling needs and desires of consumers. The point is, how are you fulfilling those needs and desires? Advertising